Welcome back to the Takeout. Welcome to the Conversation Corner. Love hanging out here. According to a new report out today by Axios, Trump administration has eased important economic sanctions on Venezuela, in particular, lifting sanctions related to banking that were first put in place during Trump 1.0. Marc Caputo covers the White House for Axios. He broke the story, joins us. Friend of the show, great to have you here. Thanks for being in the Conversation Corner. Thanks for hanging out.
Well, thanks for having me.
What happened and why?
The karma happened. The Trump administration, Trump 1 in 2019, put all of these sanctions on Venezuela to make sure that its banking sector was crushed. Many years later, Trump 2 takes out Nicolas Maduro, the dictator, installs Delcy Rodriguez as the vice president, wants to prop her up, or as the president, wants to prop her up and have Venezuela as a functioning U.S. ally and developing its oil. The problem is those sanctions are still in place. So the United States essentially controls Venezuela's oil and oil sales, has it in a special account, but Venezuela's national bank can't use most of that money because of those sanctions.
Because it's dollars.
Right. And in order to participate in the U.S. Or in the global financial system, which is dominated by the United States, you need U.S. permission to do it. And so there were economic problems. There were public sector workers in Venezuela who've been protesting in Caracas, and Delcy Rodriguez, the acting president, has been nervous about this, telling the United States, look, I've got a problem. If you don't let me use U.S. dollars and participate in the banking system with the oil that you now control, I'm not going to be able to give people raises. They're going to keep protesting, or I'll have to print money and cause inflation, and that's a problem too. Solution, ease the sanctions. They didn't eliminate them. They gave certain types of licenses. It's very complicated things, but essentially they can now use U.S. dollars.
And who did Delcy go through? Do we know?
I don't specifically know, but
this is a Treasury Department maneuver, so obviously it had to flow through the Treasury Secretary. But I wonder if there's sort of like an informal case officer or something where the administration has created a conduit for Delcy for as long as she's the favored political leader of Venezuela, from the White House's perspective, can go to.
Generally speaking, she's dealing with the U.S. Embassy through the State Department, and Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, is her point of contact.
Got it.
And so there had been discussion, which I didn't get into the piece, but we can talk about here now, between the State Department and the Treasury Department of how do we do this. And there was some sort of typical sort of bureaucratic discussion, but eventually it got done.
Right. Very quickly, do we have any sense of when there is going to be a transition or elections?
No.
Right.
In the end, the Trump administration says it wants to have elections, but the reality is that the war in Iran has been, at least from the perspective of the Western Hemisphere, a distraction. And what's interesting when you look at the problems that have occurred with the war in Iran and the relative lack of problems with the operation in Venezuela, the comparison between these two countries and sort of how to do regime change or regime change light is pretty stark. The Venezuela operation went off without a hitch. You can't say the same thing about it.
You cannot. And in Venezuela right now, it appears stability is preferred over transition at any time in the near future.
I would say so, yeah.
Marc Caputo, great to have you here, man.
Thank you, man.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate you.
Always welcome.